सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सजीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहं। शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Verse 64. As we have already been saying now since last few weeks, that this is a very interesting and an important topic for any seeker. And here we are defining the seeker to be the one who is seeking his own inner maturity, seeking to grow a little more independent in his mind, of the world, of people, seeking his own stable state of happiness, seeking to know ultimately, finally, the truth, which is actually the real purpose for one's existence. This seeking is very inherent in all of us otherwise. But we only center it differently in different aspects. The seeking remains the same universally, and it is not just bound to human beings. It is a universal quest. Just as you seek food, self, of his misery. Here in these verses from 61 onwards, Bhartrhari is addressing that aspect where every seeker who needs auto-correction, self-correction, mental correction, because there is nothing that is actually the remedy for it, the unhappiness, actually point a fault to someone else. It is so clear to us. But when it comes to our own selves and understanding that our own state of dissatisfaction, displeasure, whichever term you want to use it, our own state also needs our own correction. It is not always that the fault lies outside. In fact, as we say for ourselves, we start with a safer method. The safer method is, let's examine inside first. To examine inside, it can only be my own misunderstandings, it can only be my shortcomings, it can only be my inadequacies, it can only be my incomplete perceptions. I am also as imperfect as the person outside. And when I recognize that within myself, Why is it that I'm not as articulate to myself that, see, this is where I went wrong and this is what needs to be done and this is the auto-correction for it? Why do I find it so difficult to correct my mind when I have already pointed to it where lay the cause of its own dissatisfaction? And most often, it's a safe thing to say, where lies the cause of all the mental unhappiness? Unhappiness is mental anyway. But where lies the cause of all the unhappiness? Where does it lie? Of course in oneself, but where in oneself? What about oneself? What about it in the mind? When the mind is holding on to something which actually is not in alignment with what is. When does the mind really get dissatisfied with the environment outside? When what is the environment outside? It's what it is. But its own state of want or expectation of what it wants it to be outside makes it non-aligned. When this is not aligned with what is, it becomes dissatisfied. That's about it all. If a person is able to recognize what is as is and is able to accept it, will he need auto-correction? Will he need self-correction? Why? He will not need this because of the simple reason that he is not unhappy. Happiness in one's mind, peace in one's mind, happy with what is as is. Yes, you keep striving for whatever little better things you can get out of the world, but that's human nature. You will continue to strive. That is acceptable. But that your strive for something better outside in the world should cause unhappiness inside. Is this even relatable? When I strive for something better in the world outside, I start that I'm already a happy person and I still strive to make things a little more better. That is acceptable. But when I am actually carried away by the want of settling things outside more than settling things inside, it obviously unsettles the inside. This, he says, once your mind is unsettled, what should you do? What is it that is going to help it? Any amount of physical activity can only distract it for a little while, but it will not help settle it. And like last time we were saying, record. Chalta rehta hai, chalta rehta hai, chalta rehta hai, ruk ke. And as we are growing older in the body, we have more and more memories which just keep playing up. In spite of the fact that you want to be living, you've heard enough in the world today that you should be living in the present, that you should be here, you should be now, available to yourself, your senses should be here. But does your mind disconnect with things behind you? Does it get disconnected with things that you're actually expecting out of the future? No. You're now your own mind. How much is it actually there available to you as a person? When mind alone is the only equipment which is helping you connect to the world and to yourself. How much of that mind, the state of its own balance again? Mind happy that the mind act forward to it. Because the reasons are based on permanence and not impermanent values. Whatever are the permanent values, when we start the process of auto-correction, to auto-correct the mind which is holding on to some futile, impermanent, short-lived value, that of course is going to be some sort of an inner struggle. Because it is like a child holding on to a toy. A real baby, small toddler, holds on to in fact a real small toddler may still give it away. It is when the toddler has gone a little more grown up, has become a little more grown up and has started getting feeling for the toy, has started a feeling for the toy and starts equating the toy to itself. As long as the toy is not equated to himself, the child will no problem give away to someone. But the minute the child starts seeing the toy as oneself, saying it is my toy, what is the difficulty the child will have to hand it over to someone? When the games, the video games, all the games that you have now, When a child is busy with the game and you are calling the child for whatever work, lunch, dinner, etc., whatever, how difficult is it for the child to extricate itself from its preoccupation? That enjoyment that it perceives there, that happiness that it sees there, it is not ready to separate from it, because to give it even a temporary separation, this is our state. When we find difficulty in leaving things from the mind, talking on its own, you will say what you have to say. It's such a beautiful manner. It is developing a relationship with the mind itself. It is allowing the mind to accept what you are saying to it by removing talk. How long should you be doing if it's to be done every day? Can you spend hours doing self-talk? Can you spend morning, evening, noon, night? How long should you be doing self-talk? If you do it more than 7, 10, 15 minutes, 15 minutes is a lot. If you do it more than that, then you are definitely slipped into brooding. Brooding is the right word. You will not realize when you slip into brooding, because the minute you begin the self-talk, your mind will begin the talk. And once the mind begins to talk, then you are left aside, thrown apart completely. The mind will go on chattering, brooding once again, and you have only replayed the record. एक बार सुन के, दो बार सुन के, here Bhartrhari, what are the sense enjoyments actually? Taste. For this, will there be a sense pleasure? He had seen all forms of sense pleasures and very closely. And yet, he realized, having been so dependent on those sense pleasures, he realized that those pleasures are not the means to fulfill oneself. And therefore, he renounced his own kingdom. Renouncing the kingdom, he took to the ascetic way of life. And in that ascetic way of life, the mind is not going to leave its hold on his pleasures that it has been dependent on before. He starts this process on himself. And in the process, we all get the benefit of getting that example in front of us of who an indulgent mind was and how he put in the effort for autocorrection. How did he maintain the steadiness, the persistence, the consistency that is required for self-development? The persistence that is required actually for autocorrection. Because as I am repeating myself just now, even when we want to correct someone outside, how often do we keep pointing? Because we really realize that normally if someone is pointed to us, supposing, let's reverse the example. If someone said, this is your problem, you need correction. Okay, somebody points out a flaw in you. Someone says you are very bossy. Okay, if you are very bossy, they are not giving you a compliment. They are saying, tone down your bossiness, supposing. It is said to you, means the other person finds you a little more overwhelming than what they are ready for. They find you bossy. Now they told you, will you immediately with that person change your relationship? Ekdam se ho jati hai correction. Oh, do you respect the other person's value of their opinion of you? Do you first of all even value it? Do you first of all even respect it? Do you even have that recognition that people have the right to actually give their opinions about you? And it's okay, because that's the way they're perceiving it. So it's fine, it's okay, it's acceptable, it's respectable. And if genuinely it is being the cause of, they perceive it to be the cause of misery, not that it's going to change you who you are, it could be purely their own perception. Yet, in your vyavhar, in your conduct with that person, will you tone down your bossiness easily? Nahi hota hai na? Kyun? When you can't do this yourself, and you do now reverse it back outside. When you are telling people, ye aisa kyun, waisa kyun, why do you keep making the same? When a couple gets married, naya, means newly married couple, and suddenly the wife has to deal with the husband who's lived alone, supposing, for some time. He's used to his ways of life. He's used to leaving his room as is. He's used to keeping his towel here, shoes there, etc., etc. He had nobody to tell him, and he didn't bother him. He was busy with his life, and he was happy with it. Now the wife comes. And what is the first thing the wife says? After the first month, after first 2, 3, 4 months. Initially she's very excited. She picks it up, folds it, dries it, does everything. After 3, 4 months, what does she say? Can you please just dry your own towel? Can you please keep the shoes wherever they're supposed to be? Can you please, put your glass or put your plate back can you please? Initially she says that. What is she hoping? There'll be correction there. Initially, how she said? Please. Politely. Respecting the person. Understanding that yes, उसकी आदत थी. And ठीक है. But अब नहीं चल सकती. Because there are 2 people living. So अब नहीं चल सकती. So can you please take care of your bit of things? Because I have too much at my hand. He tries. 1 बार, 2 बार. But if that importance is not given, he forgets or whatever, etc. After 6 months, the please goes. And after another 6 months, now who needs the correction? My question is that. First, what did you start with? If only he changed the habit. You didn't need the correction at that time. But you were expecting that the other person will respect your requirement. नहीं भाई, ये requirement थोड़ी है. They respect your own. It's not even a wish. It's a necessity of a comfortable life and living. So it's okay requirement in that sense. Okay, all right. If you people say that, I don't accept the word. But ठीक है. If you think it's a requirement that your partners should hang there, चलो छोड़ो. It's okay. First, who you thought needed the correction of the habit? The other. But after 1 year, now who needs the correction? Now who needs to talk? Now, can you appreciate for yourself how difficult it was and it is to talk to yourself? Would it not be the same thing for the other? Would it be easy for that person to change his habits just because I have entered? Unknowingly, he didn't know what had entered. But chalo, theek hai, acceptable. Is it going to be actually comfortable to somewhere make the correction unless and until we do this to our own mind? Respect our own minds first. Understand that minds are just rigid. They get rigid. It has its own limitation. You can form a habit soon enough because it's dependent on pleasures. But you cannot expect a change in the habit soon enough because that's not the nature of the mind. And yet, the mind must keep changing. It has to change. It anyway changes on its own also. But it is wiser that we orchestrate the change based on reason, based on higher seeking, based on seeking whatever you are, to align your life with whatever your projects and your goals are in life. But based on that, you will have to respect your own state of mind and say, it is not going to be easy. That self-talk, which is actually to happen, is a very mature method of dealing with mind. Whether it's yours or anybody else's, doesn't matter. Most of the children who grow up to be fine adults, studies have shown it. Our Miss Google will be able to bring it to us very soon. There are studies available which actually show it to us that children who have become very fine, responsible adults had a very fine, responsible parent who engaged in a lot of conversation with the child, who engaged in a lot of talk with the child, who engaged actually communication with the child, who engaged in the method of correction, because actually maximal correction who needs? Child. Correction in which manner? Needs, just as the stream has to be aligned for it to gather a force. The child just needs some sort of a guidance, and that guidance is in the form of correction. And that correction, if the parent has handled it in a very wise way. Wise way means what? What is a wise way here? Wise is another term. Everybody can have their own meaning of wise. The shouting is also, that was my wisdom that I shouted back. That's your habit now. What is a wise way? Knowing, understanding that if the child is making something that you think needs correction for, it will need a lot of education before the child of the mind will accept. Mind of the child will accept that yes, I can now make this correction in myself. There will be doubts. There are all kinds of uncertainties that the mind comes up with, which needs correction again and again. So self-talk is not a one-time talk process. Anything that you perceive needs self-correction, program it in such a way that it is over a period of time that you're constantly handling the mind by talk to itself, just as you do for the child. It's building a relationship with your mind. Which relationship? Where your mind is now willing. That's why we often give the example, and you've heard it 1,000 times and billion times by now probably. Hanuman's mind is epitome of a mind which is obedient. It's an epitome of that. It is a mind which listens. It's a mind which listens to what? To its own higher being. Here in Hanuman's case, who's the higher being? Rama. That Ram to whom he has devotion for. To that Ram, every word of Ram is very easily heard and accepted and lived. Hanuman's mind doesn't turn up and say, after all, why? Why should I cross the Lanka? How will I cross the Lanka? Is it even possible? Insani nahi kar saka, bandar kya karega? How will I cross the Lanka? There is no bridge, there is no nothing, there are no trees I can jump about, there is nothing. He has to find Sita, and he finds a method to find Sita. The method unfolds itself because his mind is obedient. He has to go to that Parvat to get that booty, Sanjeevani booty. Sanjeevani booty. To get, now, he doesn't know which is that booty, but he knows he has to bring it. So what does he do? Carries the whole mountain. A mind which is obedient. These are not just stories. They actually depict something very beautiful. A mind which becomes obedient to its own higher nature means your own higher buddhi. When a mind is comfortably in relationship with its own higher self, that mind gains tremendous power and strength. That shows in kind of impossibilities also. How can anyone pick up a mountain? But that depicts the strength of the mind. This strength of the mind is actually what the jiva, the individual, requires, even in his day-to-day life. As we started by saying, how much of our mind is really available to us? If we honestly assess, actually we are not even aware of the potential of our mind. We are not even aware of it. The amount of dissipation that we have in our mind is what we've got used to. So honestly speaking, our mind has a very small capacity at this moment. But is the nature of the mind to be what it is, in the sense that it is only going to have this much potential? It's not possible, because we do all kinds of human feats. Every human achievement has come from a mind which was strong. A frail mind, a weak mind, a dissipated mind hasn't been able to achieve anything. What was that when the bulb was a very famous quotation? Who invented the bulb? Edison? Now what did Edison say before the bulb actually got invented? A very famous quotation of his. What did he say? I know how many ways. He only said this?
Yeah, pale.
How many ways?
The experiment can pale.
How many ways it will not light?
Yeah.
I know that. Before he came to light. Now हम लोग क्या करते हैं? एक बार कह दिया अपने मन को, 2 बार कह दिया, उसके बाद what happens? Where's the persistence, consistency for what we want our own higher nature to be? What happens very soon to us after some times? Most of us finally give it up, or else just accept मेरे बस की नहीं है. Not for me. You know, it's beyond my capacity. Isn't this all that we say? It's beyond my capacity. You know? Beyond your capacity means what? You have already limited your capacity to what it is available now in the present. And what is available in the present now is only maximally dissipated के बाद कितनी रह गई तुम्हारे पास अभी? इतनी सी तो रह गई. अब इतनी सी की तो capacity नहीं हो सकती. So how is this capacity increasing? It is increasing when you prevent the dissipations. And how do you prevent the dissipations? When you are in the process of your own self-corrections. And Bhartrhari is bringing these methods of correction in these verses. Talk to yourself. And talk to yourself means you talk to yourself. Don't let the mind talk to you. The mind is given a time to talk to you. But you do not let the mind continue to talk to you, giving you very little time to talk. You know how sometimes when you have lectures, you've heard it everywhere. Aajkal, I think people have become very disciplined. But I remember 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago, I don't know if it still happens, honestly. But when somebody was invited for a talk or somewhere, and the one who would give introduction. And normally if a learned person is invited to give a talk, then the person who introduces is also fair enough a learned person. And if that learned person who introduces spends most of the time as if introducing, but what is he really doing? He himself is going on talking. This is how we do. Finally, what is the real time left with the main speaker to talk? Very little. This is how we do with our mind. When we want to start the process of self-talk, we have invited ourselves to talk. Now I will pick up myself and tell myself, if it needs first with sama, dama, danda, bheda, jo bhi chal jaye, I have to get my mind to be leaving things that are harmful for it, that are actually not, which I have seen as the cause of my unhappiness, period. That's it. You know, having located that, in that process of self-correction, what am I actually intending to arrive at? Talking to it, educating it, means I need more time than my mind should get, no? Now means I must have a clear data. I must have a clear buddhi. I must have a very clear intention. I must be very connected to what I really desire out of my own talk. If my own connection is not there of what I desire out of my talk, then I am again going to get into the hands of the mind. When I am clear about what I want out of this talk, you know, it's like when people go for a meeting, especially the ones who are powerful in their conduct of a meeting at a higher end, business ends and things like that. It's a one-time deal, supposing. The way you interact with the client will either give you the deal or will give the deal to someone else. And the deal may be very important for you. Now, how do you manage that communication? That finally you have to clinch the deal. You know, a lot of times people use different methods. I just read one today. One very nice, what was the best interview? Example of a good interview on the point of the interviewer's point of view was asked. He says he went for an interview. And the one who was interviewing, he just said, sit down, bottle of water in front of him. He says, you must be tired waiting, have some water. As he picked up the bottle, the interviewer said, he says, but drink without opening the cap. You have to drink without touching the cap. ये तो हो गया ना interview शुरू. First he says sit down, have water. Then he says now drink without opening the cap. And this interviewer says, he picked up, did like that, shook it. He says, it's empty. So the interviewer says, it's not empty, it has water. He says, no, see, it's empty. He says, no, there is water. And this argument went up and down a couple of times. The interviewer got furious. He picked up the bottle. He says, I'll show you there is water. He opens the cap and he pours the water in the glass, and the one who went for the interview, he took the bottle, put it in his glass, drank the water. What is this technique? Is this not a technique? What has he achieved out of this now? Is it just a job he has got? What has he really achieved? What has he managed to convey? How did he convey it? Take all of us. Went for an interview. Same thing happens. What would we do? क्या करेंगे हम? How to? I am very certain our esteemed audience, we will not drink water. See, everyone, so clear it is to us. We would rather remain thirsty than drink water. But what we have missed the point was, when was he anyway offering water to you? He was not being courteous. He was interviewing you. Your interview started there. Now, all of us would think it is a courtesy that he has shown. Yes, you may get some sort of a clue कि without कुछ तो चालाकी है, but let's get down to the topic and let him ask me the question. No, thank you, I don't want water करके हम चुप हो जाते. Between the mind and the intellect, your own buddhi. See, the example is very apt. How will you talk to yourself? Finally, you have to clinch the deal. Means you will have to make the mind follow, be obedient to you, that what is good and what you have understood, and we all take a lot of effort to put in to understand what is right and what is wrong. That right and wrong, universal right and wrong, not a subjective right and wrong, and to actually want to follow a life based on those universal rights and wrong, even in a relative aspect of our own life, take a lot of effort to understand that, because that itself needs a lot of effort. How is my mind to know myself, let me say? How am I to know what is right and what is wrong under any circumstance? That I have to choose, I have to do. Is it right to expect my partner to dry his towel? Right or wrong? Is it a question that can be answered, really speaking? But yet I want him to dry his towel, no? How are you going to deal with this mind now? You see the difference? What implies how to talk to yourself. Now he has said there are few very fundamental aspects of the minds in the last 2-3 verses he's been talking about. In this particular verse, he says the fundamental aspect is that I have a lot of attachment for my relations. The attachment for my relations means what? He says those that actually cause moha. We have often used the word. Moha means attachment. Moha also means delusion. Now an attachment which actually, and I am combining both the words. A moha which actually brings delusion. Attachment which causes delusion. Have we not experienced this really in our life? That whenever we are attached means what? We have to understand the word attachment. An attachment is just a sense of pleasure that the mind has experienced by some object of being, and mostly being, because objects are easy to detach from relatively. If you are a jadavritti, then even objects we find very difficult. Or you have a very expensive object. Supposing somebody, if you value someone, what someone has given to you, and then you can't hand it over, or you valued an object. Those examples are all there in our life, and actually you start from there. Are the objects really what I'm really detached from? If I'm not detached from objects itself, where will I be detached from people and relations? That this mind has got into relation only because of my need for relations. Once I have the requirement of relations and the need, which is fine because every human being is a dependent being. It is not the relation which I have to throw out. It is my dependency of the pleasure that I have acquired from that relationship that I have to throw out. You have to hear this well. Detachment doesn't mean throw things out, throw people out. Detachment just means the pleasure that I have experienced because of the person. If the person gave you sorrow, will you have attachment to that person? You are praying heart to heart. हे भगवान, कुछ कर, या इसे उठा या मुझे उठा, कुछ तो कर. If the person is giving you sorrow, you're not going to be attached to the person. Why are children attached? When are children attached to the parents? Particularly when do daughters get attached to the mothers? When? When do they get attached to the mothers? That time? Just before that stage. Just before that stage. And then when they become mothers, they start appreciating what their mother. That is different. But real attachment is only when the mother is available to them for all the things in the growing stages. They are not really attached at a very young age. They are not going to be as attached later on when they have their families. They are only going to be attached at the age when the mother is available on the telephone, on WhatsApp, on everything, every mode. I mean, if I need my mother, I need my mother. It's day or night, it doesn't matter. But I need my mother, and she's there. Period. That's the time. Why is the child attached to the mother? Is it greatness of the mother? Oh, the child had a great mother, so the child has got attached. No, mother was an ordinary mother, like every mother is a mother. All mothers are great, in other words. Why? Because they can put themselves into such a mode that their child can keep them. They're available to their child all 24/7, 365, tirelessly. Is like, wow, great. Greatness, yes, in that sense they are all very great. But my point is, child is developing attachment because of what? Is it because of the fact that the mother is great? Supposing the mother expects the child to do certain things. Ulta karo. Mother is expecting the child to do. Like in a lot of underprivileged homes, in difficult homes where, the mother goes to work and one of the daughters have to stay back home to take care of the other siblings and things like, वो घर के सारे काम करती है, mother बाहर जाके काम कमाती है. Now, is this daughter going to be as attached to her mother? When the mother is coming back and saying, chai bana ke de, to the daughter. Yes or no? Is the example right or wrong? Obviously, there will be a difference of attachment. Even if she is attached, it will be more out of her goodness and values. But that attachment will be different from the attachment that is going to come when your mother is feeding you. A mother which is 24/7 available, that you can come any time of the day and night, and your mother is always there, ready with a glass of, or doesn't go to sleep only till you come home. Tossing around in the bed here and there and getting up and going, etc. Anyway, I don't want to linger on that example much. But the point here is, you have to appreciate when do you get attached. He says, attachment. He's talking to the mind. I will just chant this verse in our Dhyana Shloka tune. I will chant it. You just listen to it first and we'll see later on. Moham marjayatam uparjaya ratim Chandrardha chudamanau Cheta swargatarangini tatabhuvam Asangamangi kuru ko vavichishu budbudeshu cha tattillekhasu cha shrishu cha ज्वालाग्रेषु च पन्नगेषु च सुहृद् वर्गेषु च प्रत्ययः. I will put up this chant on the website also, so you can practice it from there. Now he says moham. The actual translation of this verse, just to read it in one sentence. How will you read the sentence? He says, cleanse the attachments which cause delusion. He's addressing his mind. He says, cleanse the attachments which cause delusion. O mind, acquire devotion to Lord Shiva, whose head is crowned by the jewel of the new moon. Accept dwelling by the banks of river Ganges. Or else, in who do you want to place trust? See, he's talking to the mind, okay? He says, if you don't want to attach yourself to God, so for in whom do you want to trust? Then he gives examples. In the waves and bubbles, and in the lightning, in the sparks around the fire, and in serpents, and in the hosts of friends. This is the verse. How many sentences? First he says, cleanse the attachments. Moham marjayatam. Marjaya is actually purify. Shodhayam. Shodhayam. Shodhanam. Clean. Purify is the word. It's not just clean, it's different from purifying. Cleaning is not necessarily purifying. Purifying process is always done with the help of Ishvara. When you say you clean the mind and you purify the mind, what do you say? Interrelatable, of course, but purify. Shodhanam word gives us clearer picture. When you do any puja, before you do the puja, you have to go through the process of Shodhanam. Clean yourself. It doesn't mean take a bath. Taking a bath is cleaning yourself. Having taken the bath, you have to first purify yourself. What is the method of purifying? You have to do that kumkumam, chandanam, or whatever your own lineage is offering to you. Purify this body first. Then go around purifying the idol, the place where the idol is placed, etc., etc. The purification always involves some sort of a involvement of the divine in one way. It is more than just cleaning, because purifying is in the intention. Is actually, you can use them loosely because they're English terms. But we are sticking to the term that is used here, marjaya. Marjaya means purify it. Loosely said, yes, I accept. Cleanse it. Purify what? He says, moham. Clean yourself. Purify the moha. How does one purify the moha? What is moha first? Here he says, putra mitradi asakti. Janaka ajnanam. Because of ajnana, is born, Janaka, has taken the birth. This birth of this asakti, attachment, towards what? Putra, mitra, etc. Towards the son and friends, means children and friends, means everybody included. This moha, which means my attachments for people and things around me, based on coming from ajnanam, based on the fact that I see them as necessary for me, he says, this is the seed of delusion. Using the moha in the other sense also. Wherever there are attachments, there will be delusions. Delusion per assessment of things. You may err in your judgments, You may actually get overpowered by emotions and lose your rationality for some time, temporary. Depends on the strength of the attachment. As we often say in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is showing in the first chapter, everything that he says in the first chapter, Arjuna is only showing attachment towards people he felt were very important for him. As I said, he was not attached to Duryodhan. He was not attached to Duryodhan. His brother hai after all. Cousin hi sahi, koi baat nahi, brother hai. He could have got attached, no? But he is not attached. He is attached only to Bhishma Pitama, and he is attached only to his Drona, and of course to his own brothers and his own mother and his wife and his children. He is attached to all of them. But from the other side of the party, he is only attached to those two people. The rest of them, he is ready to see them as enemies. He has no problem in fighting with them. How interesting. Khade sab wahan pe hain. But your mind has picked up those two people there. You know? Attachment has surfaced for those two people. Actually, they are all ready to fight him. Fight them. Including Drona, including Bhishma. Logic or buddhi, for which he was preparing for so long for this war, he knew it already that they will be standing there, ready to fight them. It was not a surprise element. It didn't come as a shock. He didn't expect them and suddenly he finds them and therefore the attachment surfaced. It was an accepted thing. They will be there. He knew it. Yet, when he saw them, the thought that they will not be there after the war. Abhi to war shuru bhi nahi hua tha. The thought that they will, if he dies, he has no problem. But if he has to win the war, they have to die. And the thought that they will not be there tomorrow gives him a sudden disturbance. Attachment. His, in the serials and the movies you see that. जब किसी को attachment surface होता है, especially at certain moments like parting and things like that, सारी पुरानी बातें याद. बचपन में उसकी गोदी में ऐसे रखा, ये किया, उसने मुझे ये दिया. What are the things you remember in attachment? When you are attached, do you remember the fight you had? And you may have had more fights than actually their mother must have come running for the milk. What do you really remember in attachment? Only the good things. वो सब याद आता है. वो सब इसलिए याद आता है because they were feeding you. Once that relationship has become extremely important to your mind and that attachment has surfaced, at that moment, like Arjuna, who loses his path suddenly, he doesn't know what is right and wrong. Coming prepared for a war, suddenly he loses his sight of the purpose of the war. He doesn't know should he be fighting or not. अरे ये क्या battlefield पे आने के बाद तुम्हें decide करना है कि you should be fighting or not. It's like saying, no, forget it. Okay, so he says, this moha, you have to see how attachment, which creates the delusion. And I'm not saying all attachments create delusions. That's why I wanted to point out the difference. It's not necessary that there'll be a degree of attachment which is quite warm, which is quite enough to just have a beautiful coexistential life. It doesn't disturb your reasoning. It doesn't disturb the mind. It never ever errs your judgment to do what is to be done. Even if your attachment is very high, but you also have very high reasoning and you also have a very high state of your own inner development, that however high your attachment be, it never overpowers your reason of what is to be done. Correct, right, the right judgments. It never errs in that. It is fine then. The problem here was, and now bring in the context of Bhartrhari, he has seen what attachment does to the mind, weakens the mind. It makes it so kamzor that it starts shaking And the reason itself loses somewhere. The reason, there is an error in judgments that happens all the time. In attachments which weaken the mind, I'm restating it. In attachments which weaken the mind, where the person forgets what should be the right thing to do. It's like supposing someone is unwell in your home suddenly, somebody whom you are attached. Okay, let me put it this way. A movie scene is easier to depict. House on fire. Everybody inside. Everybody running out. Small toddler in the house. Whose mind goes to the toddler first? The one who was attached to the toddler. है ना? बाकी सब भाग गए. अगर माँ भाग भी गई, फिर भी सबसे ज्यादा कौन तड़पती है? वही तड़पती है. भागी थी वो. She will want to come back and risk her life to rescue it. What happened when she wants to come back and risk her life? जब भागी तब attachment नहीं था. Surface नहीं था, तब अपनी life की attachment थी. Wanted to survive. That's an instinct everybody has. You may want to protect yourself first. Okay, allowed. But then attachment surfaced. Like they show in the Hindi movies. सब रोक के रखे हैं उसको because she wants to go inside, try to protect the child. Everybody has to hold on to her because she has lost the reason now. To her, her only reason is at whatever cost she has to protect, save the child, and even if it means giving up her own life. She's ready to. Right or wrong, I'm not saying. Are, if you had reason before, you ran out, you should have taken the child with you. Whatever. This is just a, of course, very flimsy example of it. I know. It is flimsy. Doesn't matter. But it conveys the point to some degree. Important thing is when you err the judgment. When do you find that your attachment makes you weak? That you start taking incorrect decisions that may harm you. And the problem with such moha is that it may not immediately surface in life. When the moha strengthens itself to the extent that you are now ready to take wrong decisions, you do not know right and wrong, let's put it this way, and you start making mistakes in your choosing. That may happen much later in life. By then it would be very, very late to retrace the steps. So Bhartrhari, he says, Marjaya, purify yourself from all such unwanted extra values that you have placed to relationships. Have the relationships. Be warm with your relationships. Be reciprocative with your relationships. But do not seek pleasure out of them for your sake. Do not seek pleasure out of them for your sake. Have the relationships. Be warm with the relationships. Maintain the relationships, whatever it requires, but never at the expense of allowing the relationships to delude you. And I'm repeating myself just in case you've forgotten. You can have attachments very high, pleasure-seeking attachments, provided you also have the strength to, at every moment, be alert that you are taking the right step when it needs to be taken, that they do not overpower you. Then the attachments don't make a problem. The attachments only make a problem when they are weakening you. If they are not weakening you, attachments are not an issue. They're not a problem. So he says, cleanse them. Kaise lekin? How to cleanse them? Very simply, the Tikakar here says, Tyajeti yavat. As if you're giving them up. As if you're giving up the relationship. As if you're yavat. जैसे ही हम दे देते हैं, we give it up. What do we give up the relationship? We give up the aham and the mama and the extra value that we have placed to the pleasure seeking in that. We give that up. He says, reduce this black market. And when you have to reduce the black market, you have to take some very stern steps. And in taking the stern steps, sometimes some people go through difficulty. But what is the purpose? reduce the black market value. You have given a black market value to emotions in your life, to relations in your life. Those black market values you will have to reduce. So he tells his mind, cleanse them. Means all, I remember once on I think on Facebook only I read one friend had long, many, huge friend list, let's put it this way. One time the heading came, I have decided that all the friends and that huge list, I am cutting it short only to people that really are friends, ultimately. What is this called? पहले तो तुमने फैलाया, बढ़ाया, फिर तुमने क्या किया? छाटा is the right word. फिर तुमने उसको छांट दिया. That छांट दिया का प्रोसेस क्या था? तुमने जिसको जो वैल्यू एक्स्ट्रा दे दिया था, तुमने उसको छांट दिया. Why, he says? He says because these are your weaknesses. See them as your weakness. You need people. Because you need people, you are building relations. You're not building relations because the relationships are meaningful. You just build relationships because you need people. He says, give them up. So instead, what should you do then? The mind will say, "Phir main khali बैठूं." Kiska mind बैठता है without relationships? He says, instead of that, by giving that up, uparjaya ratim. He says, upadaya sampadaya. Ikattha kar. Start collecting, acquire. Rati. Rati is anurukti. Anurukti means liking. Ek rag. A devotion. Attachment. Start acquiring an attachment. A liking. Liking is the right word here first to start with, because before it becomes attachment, it has to be first liking. Without liking, there won't be an attachment. Start liking. What he says? Chandrardha chudamanam. That Chandrardha means the crescent moon, the new moon, half moon. Chudamanam. He says the gem on the crown. Who has that crest moon as the gem on the crown on the head? Shiva. So he says, start acquiring a liking for Ishvara. He uses Shiva. But Shiva is representing Ishwar. Instead of having a liking for people here, objects here, इनके लिए रति रखने से अच्छा, he's telling his mind, रति रख उसके लिए. Start building the rati there. Why is this rati difficult with Ishvara? Many of us averagely will say, who God? Why God? Who has seen God? Who knows about God? These are other topics, sometimes else. In this context, why is it difficult to form a rati with God? Why is it easy to form a rati with child or friend? Because it's seen, pratyaksh. Because it's contactable. It's an immediate rati. Sorry? Tangible. Because it's tangible. Whereas rati with Ishvara is almost a fantasy, as good as a fantasy. You don't even know whether there is a God to whom you are going to develop a rati for. So pata bhi nahi hai, it's intangible. Now that he says, we have all done this in the previous other classes on Vedanta, why it is essential. He says to the mind, develop that rati. And in developing this rati, one thing that is going to happen is, he says, this mind is not so easily going to give up the black market value that it has got used to. So, to give that up, you will need some sort of a temporary withdrawal from things that the mind was very fond of before. Give it a temporary state of withdrawal. And that, he says here, depicts it by saying, accept. He says, Angi Kuru. Angi Kuru is manja. Accept. What? Asangam. Attachment. Accept the attachment of Swarga Tarangini Tata Bhuvam. Swarga Tarangini. the river which comes from heavens. Which is the river which comes from heavens? Tarangini is river, Swarga is heaven. The river which descends from heavens. Which is the river which descends from Ganga, Ganges. He says, uske tat pe, bhuvam means live. Live on the banks of the Ganges river somewhere. Which is indicating to saying to us in our context. हम तो नहीं जाने वाले कहीं पे river bank पे. But in our context, what does it mean? Simplify your life. Keep it in a very simple mode. Simple mode means what? All unnecessary engagements and unnecessary excesses. Don't pay excess luggage. Carry light. Travel light. Travel light means travel only the luggage that you can handle, that you don't need a porter for. If your luggage has so much that it needs a porter, don't carry that luggage. That is excess luggage, which needs a porter. What you are going to need is only what you are going to carry. Learn to live with what you can carry. He says, this he is depicting by saying, live by the banks of the river. He says, अगर तुम ये करना नहीं चाहते, तो क्या करना चाहते? Because the mind is going to throw up its excuses. No, but I want my child. No, I want my parent. No, I want my house. No, we are so badly, desperately in need of everything. So we are wanting, all those things are our needs today. If we start making a list of our needs, it's interesting. As I said before, I was watching a video, traditional methods of cooking in the village, how they cook. Today also they cook. There are some floating videos. Village in Andhra, there seems to be some channel which is beginning to encourage it. Honestly speaking, it last time I also gave you people the example. It touched me. How much effort these people put to cook a meal, and how much do they have? They have just a fire, means to light a fire. They have just a few vessels, mud, clay pots. There are 2-3 clay pots, 1-2 stirrer, few plates, all masalas in it, but they cook with such cleanliness. Some mitti everywhere. That's actually it's a ground. Maybe flies also. You can see one odd. But actual process with which they're doing is they rinse it so well, they clean it. I don't think our people at home, they clean it so well. Cooks and all that. I don't think they do. They're putting in a lot of effort, making it as well as possible within those constraints. Food is ready. Interesting. How much do they have in terms of possession? Yes, of course, it doesn't mean have less possession. But he says, when you keep your life with less things, you will have more leisure. You have more leisure when you have less things. Less should be intelligent. Less doesn't mean that you have difficult life. Village life is a difficult life. We are not saying have that. You be intelligent enough, have what eases your life, whatever is fine, makes your life comfortable, but be careful of not expanding it. If you need, have a little more. But that, he says, when I go to the banks of the river, he tells for himself, O mind, he has been a king, giving up his kingdom. He says, allow me, O mind, to stay by the banks of the river. Accept this condition, this choice of mine, because mind will throw up its biryani khana hai usko. King tha na wo, तो king था, वो भी मध्य प्रदेश में क्या मिलता है उसको, वो he is used to that platter in front of him, and he's been an indulgent one. Now he is suddenly taken to a life by the bank, river bank. When you take to that river bank life, now what is the mind going to, is it easily going to accept it? मान जाएगा कल मूल पत्ता खाने के लिए, रॉ फूड खाने के लिए, भिक्षा पे रहने के लिए, आसानी से रहेगा वो. But Look at the value. This is why it is Vairagya Shatakam. 100 verses on Vairagya. Why? Because he is saying the mind, once the buddhi begins to understand the futileness of the possessions and the life that we live most often in dependence. Once it has become clear of it, the mind is actually going to be ready to give up its value. But you have to go through that interim stage where you will have to educate it. When it has still got value for those things, but you have understood the value of the higher, and you know that the mind will also follow suit, but it will take some little time in between. Now to that he says, allow me, accept, angikura, kuru. He says, angikuru, that I dwell in places like banks of the river, where basics are easily available without excesses. Let me put it this way. The basics are available without excesses. What you require for survival is available without excess. Then he says, if you don't want to do this, 2 minutes more. He says, तो तुम क्या करना चाहते हो? He says, कहा वा प्रत्ययः. Who else do you think can you have really reliability on? He's asking the mind. If this method of life, which is really conducive only for the higher, choosing that method of life and in continuation with the previous verse, making your life conducive for Shreyas, that which takes you to your higher being. If you do not think this is a good life to be dependent upon, then which life are you wanting to be dependent upon? Are you want to rely upon, he uses these words, vichishu. Vichishu is, do you want to depend upon the waves? Waves of the ocean, waves of the river. Do you want to depend upon the budbudeshu, the bubbles? Do you want to depend upon tadillekhasu? Tadillekhasu is like forked lightning. So flashes of lightning, He says that lekha is the streak. So line, So that line of streak of lightning, flashes of lightning. Just Shri Shucha. Shri is always wealth, also looked upon as beauty. Beauty, wealth. Do you want to depend upon beauty and wealth? Jwala Greshu. Do you want to depend upon the Agni? Agre is the sparks that you see in front of the Agni. And there's fire fresh lit and you have more spark flying around, and it's very attractive to see. It's very nice to see. He says, do you want to depend upon that? Cha pannageshu. Pannageshu are the serpents. Then suhrud vargeshu cha. And all the hosts of friends and your well-wishers, suhrud, those who mean good for you. He tells the mind, do you want to depend on these things? Which means, actually he's saying, don't depend on these things. Why? Because all of them, you see, have a very typical characteristic. What is the characteristic? They're all momentary. They're fleeting. What about the serpent? You see it one moment, next moment, briskly off somewhere. If you are not moving. Moves off, very quickly moves off. All of them, whether it's a wave or a bubble or a streak of lightning, they all you can relate to from afar. अच्छे लगते हैं. Waves of when you are in a she's understood. When you are in one of those moods, when there are cities which are like Bombay and all those, people love to go to the oceans and beaches. And then when you're in one of those depressed Devdas moods, you sit there, quiet, looking at the waves, looking at the sunset. You can spend hours sitting there. Why? Because actually you're not looking at the waves also, but they look very peaceful and they calm you down. You get engrossed in that sound, you get engrossed in the sight and the smell, and then after 1 hour, 2 hours, your Devdas mood also kind of subsides a little bit, and then you are back to a little normalcy, but still, they're all very attractive, but from where? From far off. Lightning looks nice. If it strikes you, In one moment, the Tikakar says, they're all capable of destroying you in a moment. They'll prove fatal in one moment. How can you be so certain about these laws of life? How can you actually find them so attractive when you cannot see their real nature? What is the real nature of all life engagements which are temporary, which are impermanent? The nature of all of them is that they can actually prove fatal, which means they'll destroy you. Any one of them. Money looks attractive. Beauty looks attractive. How long? Till you are dating. After that? After marriage? It is?
It does. Beauty might attract you, but after marriage it's a problem, no? For the...
That's true. That's true. Correct. Okay. As long as you understand the principle that they are all extremely fragile. They are so momentary. They are so temporary is not even a correct word for it. They are just seen there. They look fine, attractive for a pul. They last for a little while. But what you cannot see is that in that one pul, they are capable of destroying you. All of them. So he says to the mind here, concludes the verse by saying, are you wanting to depend on all these things? Instead, he's telling the mind, I'm giving you a surer path. I'm giving you a more reliable path. I'm actually giving you the reliable path. What is a reliable path? Something you can trust in, something that you can have faith in, something that you can build confidence in. What is that trust, that path? That path towards your Shreyas. And to walk that path for the Shreyas, you have to but walk away from the attachments of the futile nature of the world. The worldly attachments, you will have to give them up. Give them up is the word Bhartrhari uses. To your own capacity, what you understand is left to you. Give them up is in the absolute sense also. Give up what is to be given up anyway. As we often say, your sleep takes away everything. Your death takes away everything. तो फिर किसको पकड़ के रखे हो? सोच के कि मेरे हैं, मेरे हैं, मेरे हैं. As long as they are there, they are momentarily there. Enjoy it. It's okay. Live with it. Have great association with it. But not with an idea that they will complete you, fulfill you, that they will give you that happiness. Do not depend on them. Do not transfer dependence on them. Enjoy, but do not transfer dependence on them. This is a very important technique to get the mind first to accept that you don't have to transfer your dependence on any worldly object and pursuit. You talk to your mind first and say, the only worthily dependence is actually Ishvara. Why? Because that alone is remaining in all times. That alone is that which will be your companion for good. And doesn't even throw towels here and there. So, no issues with Ishvara. The relationship is of the giver and the taker. He gives, we take. So he says, do this. To the mind he says, allow me to live a life of renunciation and allow me to resign away, to give up things that just cause dependence in the world. Clear? We'll continue next time. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु, सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु, सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्।